with Chris Barth. This is 7 News.
Good evening. This is a special 7 News bulletin with the latest on the Bali bomb blasts. The death toll from the two explosions at Kuta Beach stands at 187. The Australian consul in Denpasar has confirmed 7 Australians are among the dead, but warns the number is likely to rise. More than 300 people were injured in the attacks. At least a third of them are Australian.
Daylight revealed the extent of the devastation to the Balinese town of Kuta. Piles of wreckage where the popular Sari nightclub once stood. Many only just made it out before the club collapsed.
It was one blast, an explosion at the start, and about 2 seconds later there was another explosion, and that's when the buildings start to collapse.
Other tourists desperately trying to contact home. As the death toll continues to soar, the heartache is setting in for rescue workers. The job now, removing bodies from the smouldering rubble. Local hospitals are filled with the injured, many suffering horrendous burns, and those trying to find friends and relatives. Hundreds of Indonesian police have arrived to secure the site. Bomb squad officers are searching for clues. Authorities still no idea who was responsible. Officials say it appears the first bomb was detonated in a bar. As patrons scrambled to escape, they unwittingly became victims of a second blast, a powerful car bomb outside the Sari nightclub.
And the second one just picked me up. I landed out there and I lost all my friends. And then I just saw another Kiwi guy over there with his legs gone.
Indonesian authorities say it was almost certainly the work of terrorists, the target a popular destination for Western tourists. Indonesian President Megawati Soekarno Putri has arrived in the town to survey the damage firsthand. Earlier, she held a news conference condemning the attack. She also expressed her sympathy to victims' families. Indonesian military chiefs say their forces are on full alert, but that hasn't stopped the flow of people rushing to leave Bali.
This is a real tragedy for Indonesia, this inhuman act of terrorism.
Shannon Benjis, 7 News.
A major air evacuation of Australians injured in the blasts is underway. 4 RAAF aircraft are helping the massive medical effort. The first planes have landed in Bali, with medical crews aiding local hospitals struggling to cope with the huge number of casualties. 7's Reese Whitby is in Denpasar. Reese, one of the Hercules is heading back to Darwin right now.
That's right, Chris. That's an Air Force Hercules that should arrive at Darwin Airport at about 30 minutes.
And obviously communication with Bali at the moment is quite difficult. Hopefully we'll be able to speak to Reese Whitby in a moment. For decades, Australians have flocked to Kuta Beach to enjoy its vibrant nightlife. But the peace of Bali, long devoid of the violence experienced in other Indonesian provinces, was shattered almost 24 hours ago by the 2 bomb blasts at the Sari and Paddy's nightclubs. New Zealander Richard Poore heard the explosions from his nearby hotel.
All the lights went. First thing I did was tell my wife to stay in the room. I raced out with my camera running down the road, basically. And there was just a procession of people covered in blood, covered in glass, glass shards embedded into people. People's backs had obviously been on fire. It was just horrible. And there were just people just running down the road, basically. People that weren't even staying here were coming to the hotel for medical attention. They had wet blankets upstairs that they were wrapping people in. There were women with their hair on fire, their backs on fire. It was just shocking. I've got to say that, everyone stuck together. People were incredible, just people looking after everybody. Originally, we were told that it was an LPG container. The first story that came out was that some sparks had landed on a thatch roof, causing the roof to catch fire. The roof had dropped and landed on an LPG container that was out the back. And it wasn't until about 10, 20 minutes later that the idea was that it was a car bomb, and that's what came out later.
New Zealander Richard Poore, who witnessed the blast, and we do have our reporter in Denpasar, Reese Whitby, back with us. Reese, you were saying one of those Air Force Hercules is on its way back to Darwin right now.
That's right. It should arrive about midnight. About 30 people on board, stretcher cases with bad burns. They're going to Royal Darwin Hospital. And there are other Herculeses that have been called into service tonight, about 4 Air Force aircraft. So they will be in a relay situation, getting as many Australians back to Australia as possible.
What's the official word on casualties at the moment?
Well, only 24 bodies have been identified, 7 of them Australian, but we know that almost 200 people have died and well over 300 are injured. On that basis, there's a nightmare toll for Australia that could develop, at least 60 dead, and on those figures, more than 100 injured, Chris.
What sort of strain are local hospitals under?
It's enormous. Most of the pressure is on the Denpasar General Hospital. It's a terrible scene in there with hundreds of people with terrible burns. They're coping as best as they can, but they're being caught short.
Is there any word yet on who's responsible?
Well, there's obviously a coordinated attack with those bombs going off in Kuta and another one in Denpasar at the US Embassy. The Kuta Sari Club was an Australian icon, so I thought that that was a deliberate target, and it could be Muslim extremists, and there's even speculation that it's connected to an Al-Qaeda cell, Chris.
Rhys, we've had reports that Denpasar Airport is packed. Are Australians getting out of Bali?
Yeah, they certainly are. About 800 Australians are due to fly home tonight. They've cancelled their holiday for now. They just don't want to be here. There's about 3 Qantas jets that have been organised in a special charter operation. There could be more in the coming days.
Rhys, thanks for joining us. The Department of Foreign Affairs has 2 hotlines set up for concerned relatives. The numbers are 1800 002 214 and 1300 555 135. That's 1800 002 214 and 1300 555 135. The department's requested the numbers only be used by people with family members in Bali. Prime Minister John Howard has described the bombing as a brutal, despicable act of barbarity. He denies it's retaliation for Australia's role in the war on terror.
John Howard arrived in Canberra tonight. He's already called an emergency meeting of the National Security Committee of Cabinet for tomorrow. All anti-terror programs have been put on high alert, and the government's warning Australians against going to Bali.
And it has happened to our own on our doorstep.
As the body count climbs, Mr Howard says we must brace for the worst.
There are many Australians unaccounted for. Many.
Both sides of politics united to condemn the attack, the Prime Minister reaching out to the victims' families.
Our thoughts will be especially with them at this time of unbelievable stress and anxiety.
It's outrageous, it's callous, and we just have to get to the bottom of what's caused it.
Initial suspicion has fallen on a shadowy group known as Jamal Islamiyah.
And I suspect that whatever group did this is in sympathy with Al-Qaeda without necessarily being controlled by it.
The government has sent a team of ASIO agents and federal police to Bali.
It's confirmation that Australian people effectively have been targeted.
Federal Parliament resumes tomorrow with much to ponder. Among the questions already being asked, have Australians paid with their lives for Mr Howard's support for the US against Iraq? It's a charge the Prime Minister rejects.
I think that's a totally inaccurate proposition.
In Canberra, Glenn Milne, 7 News.
Not surprisingly, hundreds of Australians want to cut short their Bali holidays. Qantas is sending extra planes to Indonesia to bring them back. Many were enjoying end-of-season football trips.
From premiership triumph to agony, friends and relatives of Perth's Kingsley Football Club can only wait and hope 7 of their missing mates are somehow safe.
When they'd planned this trip all year, they'd had fundraisers and all sorts of stuff to get themselves there.
They're not alone. Bali is a mecca for end-of-season sporting trips, a route also taken by Adelaide's Sturt Football Club. 2 of its members are missing, reserves player Josh Deegan and club official Bob Marshall. So too, 20-year-old Billy Hardy from Southport Sharks Football Club on the Gold Coast. His mother and girlfriend remain optimistic.
They'll bring him home for us.
Yeah, that's all we want, just to bring him home.
4 of the club's members are believed injured. Australia's highest profile footballers were also in Bali, many spending time at the Sari Club.
Every night, and for the last 7 nights we're all there.
That includes players from Melbourne, Geelong and Fremantle. Kangaroos teammates Jason McCartney and Mick Martin treated for burns. Others also nearby when the blast ripped through Kuta.
Drove past it, turned the corner, got about 400 metres down the road and heard this almighty bang.
Many Australian tourists arriving back home didn't even know what they'd left behind.
We were sitting there joking in the airport lounge about the fact that, hey, we could go to the Sari Club while we're waiting. And to come back and hear this is just unbelievable.
Thousands of Australians remain in Bali, Qantas sending 3 extra planes to Denpasar to bring another 800 home. Robert Ovadio, 7 News.
And just a reminder of those Department of Foreign Affairs hotlines. The numbers are 1800 002 214 and 1300 555 135. The department's requested the numbers only be used by people with family members in Bali. And that's the latest from the 7 Newsroom tonight on the Bali bombing. Sunrise will have extensive coverage of the tragedy tomorrow morning from 6 o'clock. I'm Chris Barth. Good night.